There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with my attempt at a review of Rosamond Lehmann's 1953 novel, The Echoing Grove, which I read at the very end of 2020. I think I read it over a couple months, and probably should have read it even slower, because wow, this is a dense, challenging novel. I believe it was Lehmann's last, but I didn't take the time to completely verify that. She lived for several more decades and did write other stuff, but I think this was her last novel, and it's the first one I've read by her. And I loved it. It was a 5-star read. I didn't love everything about it, but I loved so much about it that what I didn't love didn't budge me off of giving it a 5-star rating. And let me tell you all about that. So, at its most basic, this is a story about two sisters, two adult sisters, who are jealously, possessively in love with the same man. If you read the back cover or you go to the Goodreads synopsis, you might get more of the plot, but I don't think you should get more of a plot synopsis before you dive right in. So I'm going to withhold a whole bunch of stuff that maybe other reviews would disclose. After a 15-year estrangement, the sisters come back together and make peace, forgive each other, in about 1946, and so there's a lot of delving back into all the dramatic story going back to the 1920s. This is a modernist novel, so the preoccupations are psychological inner subjectivity and chronicling the breakdown of society, in this case, the institution of marriage. Oh my God. If you are not into reading books about terrible marriages and adulterous people, philanderers, and marital betrayal, this is not a novel you're going to be very happy reading. But boy, does Rosamond Lehmann take you deep into the psychological substrata of all that stuff in a way that was just fascinating. Nobody comes off particularly well, and you're not going to probably fall in love with any of the characters. I didn't. But you're going to understand them at such a deep level that Rosamond Lehmann is giving you all you need from the theological perspective of a modernist novelist to say, you can't help but forgive them for their sins, can you? Wow. What a richly patterned, psychologically probing novel. I didn't get everything out of it. Just today I read a fabulous academic article about this novel, and you don't hear Shawn the Book Maniac use the word fabulous to do with academic articles very often, but it was great, and I'm going to put a link to the article in the show notes if you promise not to read it before you read the novel. But the article, I don't remember if the writer was a man or a woman, they do a fabulous job of talking about how this novel explores time in a way that's very disorienting for the reader, but ultimately where the reader, the smart reader, realizes that by the end of the novel, I, the reader, know more than the main characters, the two sisters. But boy, it's a puzzle to keep the time frame straight because you are not given the narrative in any kind of chronological order. That was fascinating, and when I read the article where this academic pieced everything together and gave it to me in a chronological order, I thought, yeah, I did a pretty good job of piecing most of that together myself, but I also missed major dramatic plot points, things that I just glossed right over in my reading. And the academic, the professor, she or he admitted that they had read the novel several times before they were able to piece it together, so I'm not going to beat myself up too much about that. This is an extremely challenging and delightfully rewarding read if the things that I'm describing here are not off-putting to you. If you pay attention to things like cufflinks and cigarette burns in furniture, and so on, Lehmann is guiding you to experience the narrative on a level far deeper and more visceral than a temporally simplistic rendering of the story would give you. What a treat. I would say, if I was pressed, if you put me against the wall and threatened to take my wine away from me, I would admit that I found the novel a bit too talky. It's not like nothing happens, but for me, a little bit too much of the story was conveyed in 20-page conversations. There was one 80-page conversation, and it's not like it wasn't rich with narrative detail. It's not like it wasn't vivid, but I could have done with a little less of that, to be honest. I wasn't too fussed about it, but there it is. That's what the one quote-unquote flaw that Shawn the Book Maniac would say. But what a rich evocation of themes such as, well, I don't want to repeat myself, but the big themes here are love, adultery, forgiveness, repressed memories, trust, secrets. Wow. There is so much in the decentered patternings with which Rosamond Lehmann structures this novel that I can't wait to read more. Rosamond Lehmann, I think I'm going to start with her debut and work my way up to it. I think I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, and if I'd started with some of her earlier works. But you're all smarter than me, so I think you should dive right in and go directly to The Echoing Grove. The title, The Echoing Grove, is intertextual reference to a William Blake poem, and various excerpts from that poem are quoted and kept on little pieces of paper in a character's wallet, for example, where Lehmann is inviting you to think about Christian themes in a decidedly secular story, including, ultimately, forgiveness, and sexual love, betrayal, and what is on the other side of all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, this is not a Christian novel. My goodness, I wouldn't have finished it if it was. But Rosamond Lehmann takes those themes and probes them in such a rich way. I am nattering now, so I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to read you without giving you any context. I have mentioned there's two sisters and that they were in love with the same man. I haven't told you anything about him. There's a whole bunch of other characters that have very important walk-on roles that are key to the secrets, lies, and withholdings of the other characters. And I'm not going to situate or contextualize this one-page excerpt at all. So I want you to experience it without knowing anything about who's speaking and what's being spoken of, just to give you a sense of the writing. And this is an excerpt, in fact, from the 80-page conversation. And I will just tell you that the speaker here is female. It's no use. We are back at the beginning. That day at Kew was out of time, I suppose. We knew we were lovers then, didn't we? But we never will be lovers. And I don't want anything else with you. I never did. You know that, don't you? At Kew there was no need to say it. I thought the only reason why we didn't go home together that night, after that day, was that we were wartime casualties of love. We had no place to go. You living at your club, and I... Perhaps you don't remember, do you? Walking half over London in the blackout after supper, taking me back to that god-awful flat I was sharing then with Jack's romping great clown of a niece in the Ministry of Food. We knew it must end at my front door, with her sitting up for me, you bet, in her Jagger dressing gown the other side of it. But that only made it more credible, more true to life, to the human condition. At least I said that. You just nodded. And then you said, was the human condition always frustration then? And I said, yes, but could be like the Three Sisters or that story, The Dead, the kind that starts echoes afterwards, backwards, and forwards, forever, wherever you strike it. One echo picking up another, till the whole thing sounds out like a fulfillment. I said I would move soon into a house, and you said, good, please do. I know you went abroad soon after. You called me to tell me so. I said you would have my address when you got back. I wrote it to you, but you didn't answer. As time went on, it occurred to me you might have decided to run out on me. Believe it or not, I was incredulous. I called you twice at your office, but you were out. I left my name, but you didn't call me back. I thought, well, that's the payoff. But when I came up the steps this evening and saw you standing there, I thought at last you had come back. At last. It was all so blindingly simple again. To myself, I mean. But things don't happen like that. We know. As well they don't, you'll say. You don't need to remark what a lot of grief and pain has been saved all round. If you do, I shall never forgive you. Don't come back. I don't want to give you news of my husband or hear how your wife is. When I listen to us shooting that line, I want to say, mind your own treacheries and I'll mind mine. How dare you offer them to me so blandly, trying to force me to agree they are acceptable? You trust me unwarrantably, Ricky. I was not at your public school. Now listen. You can listen. What I am telling you is posthumous. I have always been in love with you. I don't want an affair with you. I want to live with you. Now go. So that gives you a sense of the interpersonal dynamics in this novel. And I want to close by drawing your attention to the sentence about the three sisters and the James Joyce story, The Dead, where the speaker, the female speaker here, says the kind that starts echoes afterwards, backwards, and forwards, forever, wherever you strike it, because that, the title here, The Echoing Grove, is the organizing principle of this novel. And while you may be disoriented in where you are temporally, chronologically, in this novel, Rosamond Lehmann has set it up brilliantly so that if you follow the echoes, you will find your way to the heart of the story. Please check it out. If any of this sounds good, thanks for watching.